USC once wore the crown as the school that produced the most first-round NFL draft selections. Then Clay Helton happened, and now USC is trying to get that crown back from Ohio State. It is quite a race at 90 to 85 Buckeyes at this stage. And, of course, they will be combatants in the Big Ten, which will further the ante. Welcome into the Voice of College Football and our USC live show that we do here each and every Monday at 8 Pacific time with Matt Zemek from Trojans Wire. Pull up a chair, leave your comments and questions there in the live chat, and we will attack USC football. Of course, spring football is done. The NFL draft just commenced and closed down this past weekend, and we have much to talk about, including a recent commit to the USC football program as well. Matt, how you doing tonight?
Doing well. It was a good NFL draft for USC. Could have been better in some ways, but on balance, it's a good draft. And I think you have to start with Jordan Addison finding a great fit in Minnesota with the Vikings. Basically being Adam Thielen's replacement. That's going to be his role. And when you consider that you have KJ Osborne and TJ Hawkinson also there, I mean, Addison's going to get a lot of one-on-one situations. So he should be able to feast. He should be able to do really well statistically, should be able to help the team win. And he's going to a title contender, not a favorite, of course, but, certainly a team that's going to be in the mix in the NFC. And Aaron Rodgers just left the NFC North to go to the Jets. There's a lot to like about Jordan Addison's landing spot in Minnesota with the Vikings.
Yeah, quite an interesting ride to the NFL for Jordan Addison. Of course, he won the Biletnikoff Award at Pitt with Kenny Pickett at quarterback. Then he makes the transfer move to USC. Doesn't have that type of production, but certainly the NFL scouts were long since sold on Jordan Addison and his abilities, and now moves on to catch passes from Kirk Cousins in the NFC North Division. Your thoughts about, and based on what you've seen on the field from Addison, but also, merging that with the NFL draft analysis of what are the high points in Addison's NFL skill set, and what are those things that he needs to overcome?
So he needs to overcome the lack of size, the lack of physicality. Like, he might be able to be bodied around by bigger, stronger corners, but he can compensate for that with, high football IQ. He's a great route runner, very precise routes, so he knows how to get open. And in that sense, he's a little bit like Adam Thielen, the guys he's replacing on the Vikings. Like, you don't have to be a speed burner. Like, I remember Steve Largent back in the day. Like, he was not the fastest guy around, but he knew how to run routes. He knew how to read defenses, get open. So speed obviously helps. Like, let's be clear, but you don't have to be, the 100-meter track star to succeed in the NFL. Plenty of examples of smart, savvy receivers who can have a long, productive career in the league. And Jordan Addison definitely fits that bill. And again, there are weapons around him. So he will not be in difficult coverage situations. He's going to get matchups that he likes, and he knows what to do with a favorable matchup. We saw it quite a lot at USC. So really, there was speculation midway through the 2022 season that Addison could be a top 15, maybe even top 12 pick. You think about Drake London, he went number 8, and Jordan Addison, he came out so quickly out of the blocks in the 2022 season. He had that great game against Stanford, just lit up the Cardinal like a Christmas tree in USC's second game. And you're thinking, whoa, that draft stock's just going through the roof. But, then the injuries hit and the physical limitations became apparent. And, injuries will naturally make NFL teams a little skittish. So he falls down the draft board out of the top 20. But much like in the NCAA tournament, where you don't necessarily need that number 1 seed, get that 2 or 3 seed in the West, against a weaker team in your region. It's about matchups. It's about fits. That's the case with Addison here. So, okay, he doesn't get the top 15 selection, but he goes to a pretty good place. And really, when you think about it, it's so much better and bigger and more important to get a good fit than your numerical landing spot. Like CJ Stroud, hey, congratulations, you're a Houston Texan. Like, I mean, so he's a number 2 pick, and he's getting a lot of upfront money, and that's awesome. But really, would you rather be a Houston Texan or a Minnesota Viking? I know what I'd pick. That's not to say that Stroud's career is doomed, but just getting the right place, having the right boss, having the right setup. Like, to me, if I'm gonna not make all the money, and so CJ Stroud is making all the money as a number 2 pick, so like that's the compensation for going to an org such as the Texans. But if you're not going to make all the money, better to be 23rd as Addison was and go to the right team than be top 12, top 10, and go to a not as good NFL organization. So really good setup. I think Jordan Addison has to be very happy with how it all worked out.
Most of us are on the internet pretty much all the time. It's fun. You get to socialize. You get entertained, and in this day and age, it's pretty much necessary. And even if you're one of those people that's not on the internet all the time, you know what is? Your personal information. And there are people out there trying to hack you all the time. They want your email address, they want your phone number, they want your place of employment, and they want to do bad things with it. There's also fairly legitimate corporations and companies that want your information. They want it for marketing purposes. They're going to buy it. They're going to sell it. They're going to trade it. At the very least, it's annoying to you. It's a nuisance. It's aggravating. Your email gets cluttered up with spam email. You get robocalls all the time. That's at the very least. At the worst, it's a threat to your family, to your friends, to your personal information, to your banking, to your finances, to your security, to your safety, to your identity. It can be pretty serious. This video is sponsored by Aura. I got hacked, and it was pretty obvious. This was about 8 or 9 months ago, and there were red flags all over the place. And I didn't exactly know what to do, but I knew I needed to do something quickly. I mean quickly. I researched 8, 10, or 12 companies immediately. I went all over the place. I asked people. I was online looking for the best company that could serve my needs and secure my information. You know who I found? Aura. And I'm glad I did. It was amazing. I contacted them. They got right back to me immediately. Their customer support is phenomenal. Their customer service is first-rate, friendly. They are detailed. They know what they're doing, and they do it right, and they will protect you. In addition to everything I just mentioned, they've got a password-keeping service. They keep your credit score. They notify you anytime there's a possible data breach. This has happened to me a number of times. I'm getting notifications all the time when there's a possible compromise to my credit score or anything that I don't want. They've got a VPN that will allow you to browse the internet anonymously. It's amazing. And again, customer service support available 24/7. Click the link in the description section below and get 2 free weeks of Aura. Protect your finances, protect your information, protect your privacy, protect your identity. I did, and I'm glad I did. Aura, thank you so much for what you've done for me, and now for my Voice of College Football community. So as soon as I can, there we go.
Moving up in the world.
We're doing our best. We are doing our best. So yes, Aura.com, our sponsor here at the Voice of College Football. The Los Angeles Chargers selected one Tuipulotu off the edge, day 2, pick 54, and certainly he is hoping to get more surrounding him, more help there along the defensive front with the Chargers than he had with USC.
Yeah, and Tuipulotu, this is a little bit more complicated in terms of a draft landing spot and a draft situation. I mean, on the good side, like he stays home in Los Angeles, and you get Joey Bosa to learn from with the Chargers. So like there's going to be plenty of knowledge that he can tap into. but you're also going into a division with Patrick Mahomes. And like that is obviously the mountain that the Chargers have to climb. And it could be with the Chargers that you're going to have a coaching change before too long. Like the Chargers, I would think, like they need to win a playoff game in order for the current coaching regime to stick around into 2024. And so if there's a coaching change, you know, that puts things up in the air. So there are a few more question marks. But obviously it's still a place where I can see Tuipulotu making an impact. And, you know, this is a good time for me to promote our NFL wire sites. You know, I'm at Trojans Wire under the Gannett USA Today umbrella. You want to read Chargers Wire? You want to read Vikings Wire, Ravens Wire with Andrew Voohees? You want to read those sites. So anyway, Chargers Wire has said, and you know, reading the website's work over the weekend, that, you know, Tuipulotu might not be an instant starter, that he's more of a depth piece, but, you know, that he can work his way into being a better NFL player because, you know, the tackling and run support, you know, that wasn't as developed as his edge rushing ability. And, you know, he will be asked primarily to be an edge rusher, you know, to get Patrick Mahomes on his back. That's going to be his job to the extent that he gets, you know, a reasonable amount of snaps on defense this upcoming season. So, you know, he has to work on the run support and the tackling. But in the meantime, you know, he's going to start out as a depth piece. And so, you know, how that evolution works out, you know, then we'll learn a lot from August camp, from preseason camp for Tuipulotu. So like I can see the upside here, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad spot, but you know, it could have been better. Like I don't think, like with Addison, just an ideal fit. Like that's just a nice puzzle piece fit. It's not the same with Tuipulotu, but I'm sure that he's enjoying the fact that he gets to stay in Los Angeles, you know, homegrown product, then plays in Los Angeles for USC, now gets to stay in Los Angeles for the pros. I mean, like, you know, in terms of quality of life, and that's part of an NFL reality for any athlete, like he checks that box. So that's definitely a plus for him. So a lot of there are pluses and minuses to the Tuipulotu situation with the Chargers, but you can certainly see where he can get some upside out of this.
Talking USC football with all of you. Appreciate you being here, the voice of college football. And keep in mind that we get our week started here on the USC channel each and every Sunday night with Rick and I, with Tim Prangley hosting Trojan Conquest Live each and every Sunday night. That's at 8 Eastern and 5 Pacific. They do a remarkable job. Rick is joining me on the Voice of College Football over on the main channel coming up Thursday night at 6 Eastern. We are going to do a serious breakdown on the 60s and 70s and the top programs in the nation, and looking at the various metrics, whether those are winning percentage, national championships, records against one another, and look at the top 10 programs in the 60s and 70s and where USC ranks in those 2 decades of the golden age of college football. That's, again, Rick and myself coming up this Thursday at 6 Eastern over on the main channel. Next up, Matt, was a bit of a controversial pick for some. Minnesota takes Mekhi Blackmon, the cornerback, with pick 102.
Yeah, so this is a great story, and I think this was the most interesting story. I mean, Andrew Voohees, which we'll talk about in a bit, is the feel-good story, but this is a really layered story on a lot of levels. Let's start with just the point that, you know, where Clay Helton really fell short as USC head coach in connection to the NFL draft. I mean, he fell short on a lot of obvious levels, but where he fell short in the NFL draft, it wasn't so much the first round, because there was a steady progression of first rounders, Austin Jackson, Elijah Vera Tucker, but it was the second and third rounds. It was day 2 where USC fell off the cliff under Helton compared to Pete Carroll. And so there's a lot of symbolic importance attached to the reality that Mekhi Blackmon got into day 2 with a third round pick. And if you followed mock drafts, if you followed like Dane Brugler at The Athletic and a lot of the evaluators, the scouts, most of them, not all of them, most of them gave him like a 5th to 7th round grade. They gave him like a late day 3 evaluation. And so he gets into day 2, few prospects in this NFL draft in 2023 were picked higher relative to the consensus grade or evaluation than Mekhi Blackmon was. Now, I haven't, tracked others, but, if you get picked in the third round and you're generally getting a 5th to 6th round grade from most evaluators, like, whoa, that's over 100 places higher than you were projected to go, or at least close to 100. So few rows on the draft by Blackmon did. And so that's one story. And so the fact that this is happening under Lincoln Riley, it's hard for me to ignore, Mark, and everyone watching here on the Voice of College Football. Hard for me to ignore. If Clay Helton's still the coach of USC and we lived in this a hypothetical world where, Mekhi Blackmon was up for as a draft prospect, would he have gone this early? I mean, I'll just leave the question there. It certainly seems as though USC's reputation connected to developing NFL talent has already been boosted by the simple reality that Lincoln Riley's there, that Lincoln Riley's manning the fort, and you're just getting more attention to detail in terms of how players are being prepared for the NFL. Like Lincoln Riley already seems to have given USC a boost, as shown by Mekhi Blackmon sneaking into the third round. Now, the other really interesting part of this is that the Vikings, they had an awful defense, so Brian Flores, is their new defensive coordinator. And so reading Vikings Wire, and you definitely want to follow Vikings Wire if you're a Trojan fan, because we basically have the Minnesota Trojans with Jordan Addison and Mekhi Blackmon being picked by the same organization. So Vikings Wire pointed out that Brian Flores really was high on Mekhi Blackmon, that the way Brian Flores used Javon Holland with the Dolphins, and he was, interestingly enough, a prospect out of Oregon, out of the Pac-12. Flores seems to think that he can utilize Mekhi Blackmon and move him around the field in similar ways. Vikings Wire also noted that the Minnesota's general manager, its front office, was really enamored with Mekhi Blackmon's speed and versatility. So really, the front office, Brian Flores, both very much in agreement, in alignment, thinking that Mekhi Blackmon fit what they wanted from their scheme as the Vikings tried to revamp their defense after an atrocious 2022 season. So that's also a part of this. And then the other part of this is that Mekhi Blackmon, Jordan Addison, going at it in practice at USC. Now they'll be able to do the same thing in Minnesota. And when I talked to Tim and Rick on Trojan Conquest Live on Sunday, we all made this point. Iron sharpens iron, and that the culture at USC under Lincoln Riley, it really did develop Mekhi Blackmon's instincts. It polished, his habits as a football player. Did the same for Jordan Addison as well. And so it's all part of a larger reality of USC gaining credibility in the NFL draft world, or I should say regaining credibility that it lost very much so under Clay Helton. And so Mekhi Blackmon, in this sense, he is in many ways more reflective of USC's improved status, improved reputation in the larger football community, pro as well as college. He reflects USC's improved reputation more than Jordan Addison and Tuipulotu do, even though he went at 102. It's because, he so dramatically overshot expectations, so greatly exceeded them. So Mekhi Blackmon to me is really the big story of USC's NFL draft on a lot of levels.
And taking that Minnesota Vikings USC connection off the top of my head to yesteryear, Ranieri, Joey Browner, I'll serve those two up as well. As LBC Trojan is reminding everyone, May is Great Debate Month at the Voice of College Football, and we get it all kicked off on Wednesday night at 8:30 Eastern over on the main channel. Tony Altimore and others will be joining us as we look at what is the hot topic in college football right now. Will the Big 12 poach from the Pac-12? What is the security of the Pac-12? What is the stability there? What is truly going on? We've got Tony Altimore joining us and others. We are sizing up both sides, so we're bringing on a contingent from the Big 12 as well that believe that the Pac-12's demise is imminent. So we will let them battle it out. And it's the first of the great debates at the Voice of College Football coming up this Wednesday at 8:30. And as mentioned, on Thursday night at 6 Eastern, we've got Rick joining us, who has sized up the analytics concerning the matchups of the top 10 programs in college football for the 60s and 70s. And we'll be breaking down how those programs, all the great ones, USC, Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Alabama, on down the line, the top 10 of the 60s, 70s, and how they fared against one another and who truly should be crowned as the team of the 60s and the 70s. This next selection, of course, is unfortunately going to be a player who's going to have to sit out the entirety of the 2023 season. And just a player that I know, in speaking with Tim and certainly in our discussions here, Matt, is just a stellar Trojan, an all-time great, maybe not in just level of play, but in his commitment to the school, the university, the team, the program. And that's pick 229 to the Baltimore Ravens, Andrew Voohees at guard.
So this is the feel-good story. And of course, there is an undercurrent of, bitter misfortune that Andrew Voohees got injured, and that greatly lowered his draft position, cost him a lot of upfront money. Nothing feel-good about that, but it is a feel-good story that he did get drafted, unlike other Trojans, Travis Dye, Brett Nealon, who didn't get drafted. So Voohees at least was able to be drafted in spite of an injury. So you have that, but also he goes to a good organization, Baltimore Ravens. He'll eventually next year get the chance to block for Lamar Jackson, now being signed to a large new deal. And the extra special feel-good element of all this is not just Voohees being drafted, but that the Baltimore Ravens, they did not have a late round day 3 pick, but they traded back into the draft specifically to get Voohees. So whoever drafted Voohees, assuming that he did get drafted, whoever drafted him was going to be making a display of great faith, was going to show great confidence and trust in Andrew Voohees as a football player. But the fact that the Ravens did what they did, trading back into the draft, well, that's a double display of confidence. It's a double display of trust. And so Voohees, reacted very emotionally, not just because, yes, he got drafted, but also because he saw what the Ravens did and how much they valued him. So that, that had to make him feel extra special. That had to make him feel really valued by this organization. And so, that once he rehabs, once he gets healthy for 2024, boy, the Ravens are going to have a really dedicated teammate. They're going to have a really grateful football player who's going to do everything he possibly can. This is the guy who got injured at the NFL Combine. He bench presses with one leg on the ground like that. That showed how much of a warrior he is, and that's how Lincoln Riley views Andrew Voohees. That's really not my term. That's Lincoln Riley's term. And so it just shows that he will do everything for his team. It's exactly what he did for USC, and he does stand at the heart of this transformation USC underwent in 2022. You needed leaders, and you needed players to set the example that Andrew Voohees did. And of course, if he's on the field for the Pac-12 championship game, could have been a different story for USC. And we all saw just how central he was to this team against high quality opposition. So the quality speaks for itself. The leadership speaks for itself. The example speaks for itself. And so it was really great to see this, very significant, important, and universally beloved Trojan, Andrew Voohees, get rewarded in general, but then to also see an organization really go out of its way to get him. We really want Andrew Voohees. That was the message the Ravens sent. And that is just a spectacular story to come out of this 2023 NFL draft.
Matt, I've run the numbers in the past, but not recently, and I don't recall them exactly, but I have run the numbers on typically how many of these draft picks out of the, what is roughly 224, I think 7 times 32 brings us to 224. Then there are compensatory picks after that get us in the 240 to 250 range. that how many of those make an NFL roster, and then how many free agents, then, you start to hear that phrase being mentioned about halfway through the seventh round. Is it better to not be drafted and be able to pick your landing spot, looking at the roster and seizing the opportunity at a particular place and go try out rather than be drafted? But again, I used to have the number sized up a little bit in regards to how many draft selections typically make the team versus how many undrafted players are able to make NFL rosters. And I don't even want to go there because, again, I've run the numbers in the past, but don't have them. But I wanted to run down, of course, those guys that were not drafted by from USC, but we got Brandon Pilley, the defensive lineman, as an undrafted free agent to the Miami Dolphins. And I am not finding anyone else.
Travis Dye to the Jets.
Travis Dye to the Jets.
That's the big UDFA story. So like Travis Dye gets to, pick Aaron Rodgers' brain with the Jets. Like that is a very interesting situation right there. And, Travis Dye, phenomenal football IQ. And in my mind, like among various UDFAs throughout the league, not just talking about USC, but like having Travis Dye on your team seems like a value add to me. And I'm still bullish on the idea that Travis Dye can find an NFL home. I'm not saying he's going to have a spectacular career, but like the things Travis Dye does, they don't show up in the box score. He will block, for his teammates. He will provide pass protection. He will do the no glory things. And like, you can make a roster that way. You can make a roster, without being, elite in terms of your statistical output, in terms of your athleticism. Like, NFL rosters need culture guys. NFL rosters need high IQ guys. That's what Travis Dye is. So, and it's not as though the Jets have this amazing, incredible running back room. So, like Travis Dye, I'm sure when he sized things up as a UDFA, he saw unique opportunities with the Jets, and I'm really excited to see what happens there.
My buddy D showed up tonight, letting me know Mark is probably going to buy a DTR Browns jersey. So actually, D, it's already ordered. And I'm just going to have to put it in the rotation with Troy Aikman, Freeman McNeil, Miles Jack, Ken Norton. Yes, JoJo Townsell. We go deep on the UCLA roster. Absolutely. Love those Bruins. I'm a huge Bruins guy. Absolutely. JJ Stokes. Yes. Love that number 83. Absolutely. Good stuff there. All right. And I wanted to jump to our poll. We took a poll here on the channel. Folks, check it out. You can still chime in with your response, and I'm going to pull it up right now. And since we had too many, well, I guess I could have made it had I been thinking. I did this actually on some other channels, unfortunately. So sorry, USC fans. I didn't size this up as a poll per se now that I look at it, but I asked who is going to be the most successful of the USC draftees from this 2023 class. Matt, do you have an opinion on that one?
I mean, I think Jordan Addison is uniquely set up to succeed, but my big takeaway, because I've said this on our Trojans Wired podcast, which is going to be out later this week, I just like both of the Minnesota Trojans. I like the situations for both Addison and Mekhi Blackmon, and I think that the fact that they're teammates and that they play positions that go up against each other, I think they're just going to make each other better and better teammates as they go along with the Vikings. And they're entering the NFC North right after Aaron Rodgers leaves. So like, this is the Vikings' time in that division. So for a number of reasons, I like both of those fits. I think that the USC Vikings, the Minnesota Trojans, however you want to call them, they're both set up in really good situations in my mind.
D, here's a poll. Who thinks Mark is a closet Duck fan? There's the latest. Thank you, D. I'm not a closet Duck fan, just a Duck fan, not a closet Duck fan. We had a commit come in just here in the last couple of days. Actually, it might have been today. I lose track of time because I do believe that it's on top of the.
It was on Monday, yes.
Yeah, 247 Sports board that I check about 6 times a day. Wide receiver Xavier Jordan, who caught 83 balls this past high school football season, 20 touchdowns, 11th rated player in the state of California, 13th rated wide receiver in the country, a top 75 player who had Oklahoma, Oregon, Tennessee, Washington on his list. So, of course, anytime you think Lincoln Riley and you think recruiting, the quarterbacks and the wide receivers are going to roll in.
Absolutely. And I can't shake the notion that, getting a commitment on the Monday after the NFL draft, what is every football fan and what's every NFL executive talking about on the Monday after this NFL draft? Well, a few things, but one of the big topics is Caleb Williams is going to be the number 1 pick in the next NFL draft. Like, we're now on the clock for the 2024 NFL draft, and Caleb Williams, like, he is now very much at the heart of the conversation in pro football as well as college football. College football because he's the defending Heisman Trophy winner, but he's the talk of the NFL right now because, like, all eyes on Caleb. And Caleb is definitely a player that is worth tanking for. Like, you might not have had that same dynamic this year, like, give everything up for Bryce Young, like, maybe. But with Caleb, it's a slam dunk. Caleb is, almost certain to be the number 1 pick. And got to shout out Tim Prangley of Trojan Conquest Live. One thing he noted on his Sunday show, if you're watching, he put up some snappy graphics to boot, is that assuming Caleb Williams is the number 1 pick at the 2024 NFL draft, USC will break a tie with Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and Georgia for most number 1 overall picks. All 4 schools have 5 number 1 overall picks in their history. So Caleb would put USC 6th all alone in first place. And we made note of that at Trojans Wire, because we love the content that Tim and Rick put out at Trojan Conquest Live. We love what you do, Mark, here at the Voice of College Football on USC Trojans Live. We take that content and we put it up for consideration with our Trojans Wire readers. And so that was one of the great nuggets that Tim unearthed on Trojan Conquest Live on Sunday night.
This is the last time I'm going to humor a D and his absurdity, but I do get a kick out of these comments. Utah and Oregon homer. I don't know how you can be a homer for 2 competing teams in the same conference, but I don't know. That is kind of odd. Gixer Squid. Matt, for those recently drafted yet transferred to USC via the portal, Jordan Addison, for example, do you think the year with USC helped hurt or did not impact their draft stock?
Well, so Gixer, always excellent questions from you, this being no exception. And I think with Addison, it's a complicated story because I think knowing how well Addison functioned within the USC offense, knowing how well he performed when he was on the field, that improved his stock. But what hurt his stock was being injured, for several games. And, his lack of, raw physical size, like he's not a super duper specimen, and his combine measurables weren't great. The time that he ran in the 40 wasn't fantastic. So it's really a complicated cocktail here, Gixer. I think that the things that could be directly related to being part of USC, Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams, all of that helped, but we really didn't get to see that in terms of his draft position, right? Because he wasn't the top 10 pick that Drake London was. He wasn't a top 15 pick. He was outside the top 20. So he didn't get rewarded tangibly for that. However, that fall on the draft board really wasn't about anything connected to USC. It was about being injured. It was about worries about his size. It was about combine performance. So it's all part of a complicated story for Addison at USC.
I am ever so blessed to be tagged on the 94 tweets that Michael Campbell sends out concerning Notre Dame football every day on Twitter. And Michael here says, are USC fans still trying to play the 22 Notre Dame team with quarterback Drew Pine, or have you been, okay, let's clean up the English here. Have you been awakened with playing quarterback Sam Hartman and this wide receiver core, wide receiver coach Chancey Stuckey is unleashing in 2023? I am rather amused and entertained by you, Michael, and there's a few other hardcore Notre Dame fans that grace our airwaves here at the Voice of College Football on a regular basis, and are certainly excited about the Ohio State game coming up in September, and then later the Notre Dame USC game. So yes, Michael is talking some trash concerning Notre Dame, minus Drew Pine, with a capable Sam Hartman and the wide receiver core under Chancey Stuckey unleashing on USC this year. All right. Let's see. Touchdown USC. What's with Joel Klatt projecting Caleb Williams going as the second pick behind the Ohio State's Marvin Harrison Jr. in 2024? Does it matter? They're two exceptional players and talents. All right. By way of the transfer portal, I just checked it before we came on. I didn't see anything outstanding there in regards to anything USC related. No other transfer portal entries out of Trojans camp, nor has there been anyone that's entered the portal, Matt, that you've seen in since our last conversation that you think could be on USC's radar?
Oh, in terms of being on the radar, well, I mean, there's still offensive and defensive line prospects out there, like Cameron Johnson, the Houston offensive lineman. That situation is still up in the air. So, that is certainly something worth watching. And, one note in terms of a departure this past week, Earl Barquette, and Tim and Rick both mentioned him on Trojan Conquest Live on Sunday. So with Earl Barquette departing, so that's an open roster slot, and it's an open spot on the defensive line. And Mark, we talked in recent weeks about what combination of players USC could really use in the transfer portal in terms of positions. And I went with give me two defensive linemen. That would be my preference. Also, one defensive lineman and one offensive lineman. Could also go one defensive lineman and one person in the secondary. So you have Bear Alexander, and then you got Emmanuel Pregnon on the offensive line. So you've gotten a lot of line help, but one on each side. Boy, so to me, one more defensive lineman. Now that you've gotten Pregnon, I mean, if you get another offensive lineman, great. Not going to complain about it. But I think if USC can get another high-end defensive lineman out of all this, then the Trojans would really be set. I mean, set is a relative term. Like, I'm not saying like national championship ready, but like the roster will have received the level of upgrade needed, to come closer to the expected and hoped for standard. I do think that if USC gets another high-end defensive lineman in the portal, that that might make me want to upgrade my win total projection for USC by a game. I think that, having Bear Alexander moves the needle in the right direction, and Pregnon serves the point of, Cortland Ford transferred out. Ethan White couldn't play for medical reasons. So that sustained the depth on the offensive line. I think you need one more piece on the defensive line to feel really good that this team can take it to the next level in 2023.
I looked at something just today that was projecting that we would get the Big Ten schedule format sometime around Memorial Day. We shall see. That seems to make sense. Tony's asking about the Big Ten making USC and UCLA play the last game of the season when they join the conference. And I think all of that hinges on the treatment of Notre Dame and whether the current schedule format with Notre Dame visiting USC the final game of the season and receiving the return trip to South Bend in mid-October, if that continues to be something that is accommodated, or I would think that the Big Ten would like two of their conference members to be playing on rivalry weekend, the final weekend of the season. So I would think that the Big Ten wants USC and UCLA on the field every year, the final weekend of the season, I would think.
I don't have an especially strong opinion on that. I think my reaction to all of this is like, why mess with success? Why mess with USC Notre Dame as a rivalry? I would say, in terms of just a television and media analysis piece here, that, you can't really have USC and UCLA play big noon Saturday the way Fox can have Michigan and Ohio State in that slot every year. And of course, so playing in the West as USC and UCLA do, that's not going to be a CBS slot. You're not going to have that as a mid-afternoon CBS game because, CBS is going to get the third Big Ten game on Saturdays. So it really is made for NBC. It's made for that prime time, 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific window. And so if you're going to do that, and if you're going to be able to get USC, UCLA in that slot as part of the Big Ten package, then like that seems to me what matters most about all this is that you're getting it in a featured time slot every year. And so whether it's November 19th or November 26th, like I don't think it's that earth shaking. And also NBC, of course, still has Notre Dame. So then you're getting your television partners into involved in USC coverage and USC UCLA coverage, regardless of how you slot them over the course of the season. So to me, it doesn't seem like that big a deal to have USC and UCLA playing on Thanksgiving weekend. I mean, like I can see the argument that you want to have it on the same day as Michigan, Ohio State, and the Big Ten can make a really big deal out of that. Like, here's our traditional old rivalry and here's our traditional new rivalry on the same day. But you could also just make the argument, split them up, having them on different weeks of the season so that you can put one and then you can have the other one a week later. So to me, like, I just think why change a rivalry that works and a rivalry that is in position to take off once again under Lincoln Riley and Marcus Freeman. Like, why mess with success? It's been absolutely great for college football when these two programs are fantastic. You think of the 2005 USC Notre Dame game, that was a mid-October game. And like nothing about that game suffered or was somehow less because it was in mid-October. I think the main thing is that, and it's something that we've talked about on previous episodes here at the Voice of College Football. Some people have said, oh, maybe we should move it to September since the Big Ten likes to play all its non-conference games first, and then you lay out the full 9-game Big Ten season. Well, that just doesn't seem to work for me. And, we've just been through a 2022 season in which ESPN and Fox were both content to dump USC onto Pac-12 Network in the first month and a half of the season because they wanted to have USC on, later in the year. But Notre Dame is its own separate entity. Like you just wouldn't want to have USC Notre Dame out of the way early. That just doesn't seem like a game that you try to kick to September, in terms of meeting other conference obligations. I still think that USC Notre Dame, that should be still at the top of your pyramid, the top of your hierarchy in terms of how you schedule college football. And like it works for both schools. I think, if USC has a gripe about anything that's at least somewhat tangentially related to Notre Dame. It's not the Notre Dame game itself. It's the games that come right before and right after Notre Dame. So, again, George Kliavkoff, Merton Hanks in the Pac-12, they flipped the bird to USC, not with the Notre Dame schedule, but by having USC play Utah the week after the Notre Dame game. Like, USC just wanted one thing out of its 2023 schedule, and that was give us a soft landing after the Notre Dame road game. Didn't get it. So to me, that really is more of an issue than where the Notre Dame USC game is placed every year. I think that it works. And the main thing is that for both teams to be great, which they both have a good chance of being in 2023. If both teams are great, this rivalry soars. It's the best of the best. Still want that ESPN 30 for 30 on the Mekhi era. Like, it's criminal that we still haven't gotten 30 for 30s on Mekhi Parseghian and also Spurrier Bowden. Little digression there, but like, when the teams are great, USC Notre Dame is as good as it gets in college football. And so, like, the worrying about the scheduling of this game, I don't think we have to really go down that rabbit hole too much. I think you just need to let the teams be great, let them play, be where they are, be where they have been, and we're going to get a great show.
To extend on that point, it may serve the Big Ten to take advantage of Notre Dame, to take advantage of Notre Dame's brand and popularity. And now they have a team in USC that has arguably its chief rival in Notre Dame, and the Big Ten can take advantage of and benefit from that brand, from that game, from that draw and that pull to the rest of its brand. The one thing I'm not understanding, though, Matt, is if Notre Dame at the Coliseum is always the last game of the season, and in those years, USC UCLA gets pushed to the penultimate game of the season, then how would the Pac-12 have avoided a run of UCLA, Notre Dame, and then into the Pac-12 championship game consecutively for USC?
It wouldn't have been able to. I mean, that's the short answer there. But I mean, like, I don't view that as uniquely problematic. I mean, maybe if we lived at a time where UCLA was coached by Terry Donahue and was a powerhouse program such as it was for much of the 1980s, maybe that would be more of a gauntlet. But and maybe you'd have a little bit more concern about how difficult that progression is for USC. But by and large, because UCLA has not really retained the status that it once had, it just doesn't feel quite as much of a murderer's row progression for USC as it might have in the 1980s, or in the 1970s as well. So it doesn't land, or it doesn't hit the same way that it used to when UCLA was a lot more formidable in college football.
So my point, I didn't communicate this clearly, was what was the Pac-12 supposed to do with the UCLA and Notre Dame games this past season to give USC a better ride into the Pac-12 championship game?
Oh, nothing. There was nothing that the Pac-12 needed to do. The Pac-12 did a great job with USC's 2022 schedule because USC, when the schedule was made, USC had not yet bolted for the Big Ten. And I'm on record as saying that USC got a very favorable schedule that accommodated the Trojans' needs in 2022. USC did not have to leave Los Angeles in the whole month of November. As soon as USC got home from a very short hop to Tucson on the morning of Sunday, October 30th, it was home for the rest of the regular season. And of course, the only game it had to play away from LA for the remainder of the regular season was the Pac-12 championship game. So USC was treated like the cash cow program that it is in 2022, but it wasn't treated that way in 2023, with all the nuances of this particular schedule, even more than having to play Utah after the week after Notre Dame. The worst part of it is having to play 9 straight weeks from weeks 4 through 12, while Oregon and Washington get that perfect week 6 middle of the season break before their game in Seattle. And again, like, I'm not even criticizing George Kliavkoff in the Pac-12 office for this. Like, if USC's on its way out, of course you're going to flip the bird to USC, right? And if Oregon and Washington are the schools that you really need to retain, of course you're going to give the red carpet treatment to them. And I've said it before here on the Voice of College Football, and I'll say it again since we are talking about scheduling. Is that, like, this is just basic common sense? It's basic politics. That if someone leaves your organization, and whereas if someone, you want to retain someone for your organization, you're going to treat them differently. And I think a lot of people just aren't willing to admit that. And it's okay. Like, we can just admit that. Doesn't make Kliavkoff a super villain, but we can just say that on the merits, one school was treated really well and one school was treated horribly. And we can just be adults and admit that here at the Voice of College Football.
Memberships are available here at the USC channel here at the Voice of College Football. YouTube memberships available, so please go to the front page of the channel. You may see it, Ashley, as you are watching right now, and just click the join button. That does not commit you to anything. Then you can make your selection in regards to YouTube memberships, which feature, first and foremost, exclusive USC content that can only be found here at the Voice of College Football on the USC channel as a member of the USC channel. So Matt and I get together each and every week, in addition to our USC live show here, to provide you with exclusive content, 1 segment per week. And that is exclusive right here. So again, give it a look. You get special emojis and badges and other things. And we're always interested and welcome to your suggestions and your ideas as well. I will, without going there to make predictions in April, I'm not prepared to do that, nor would I want to be prepared to do that. I will alter the question in this way, unless you want to make a Pac-12 prediction. I don't believe that you do, but
let me just, like,
sure.
D asks this every week. So, but that point aside, I did say, like, maybe a month and a half ago on this show that, where things currently stood, USC versus Washington was the most likely Pac-12 championship game. So nothing's happened since then over the past several weeks to make me want to change that. But, like, there could be events over the summer and, in the coming months that will change that. But right now, if you ask me who's going to be in the Pac-12 championship game, it's going to be USC against Washington. And in terms of, who wins, that's secondary too. Just who gets there first. Like, so that would be how I would handle that particular question. That USC and Washington would be my pick for the Pac-12 championship game right now. But of course, that's subject to change.
Who else do you think is worthy of serious consideration?
Oregon, Utah, and Oregon State. Pretty much what we had last year. And UCLA, had its shot, blew it. The Bruins did their thing. So really, I think it's the 5 teams are in the conversation for the Pac-12 championship. And Oregon, Utah, Oregon State, they all have a chance to be really, really good. And I'm going to be fascinated to see if Jonathan Smith can be the quarterback whisperer and he can work magic with DJ Uiagalelei. If he can turn that trick, then Oregon State has all the other pieces. But it's just a matter of, can he get DJ and his mechanics on track. So it's going to be fascinating to see. And, USC obviously moving to the Big Ten in 2024, but this last ride in the Pac-12, going to be fun. Like, there are going to be a lot of 41-38, 38-35 type thrillers. There's going to be some awesomely entertaining football ahead for the Pac-12. And it's going to be, the first year in a very long time where you could enter late August, Labor Day weekend saying, wow, the Pac-12 really could be good this year. It's been a long time since we've been able to say that.
I know of a few people in the chat that would disagree with you on the 2022 season in particular, but
What about the 2022 season?
The strength of the Pac-12 last season.
Oh, well, I think, the Pac-12 is poised to be really, really good this year, and I don't think you had quite the same amount of buzz entering 2022 about the Pac-12 compared to the buzz that you have now leading into 2023.
USC channel YouTube memberships available. Just hit the join button. That does not commit you to anything. Then it allows you to look over the tiers and look over the options. But Matt and I will provide and are providing exclusive content that is already available to you at the USC channel, our YouTube memberships right here at the Voice of College Football. All right, Matt, another good show in the books, number 51. Check out Matt's work, of course, at Trojans Wire. Is there anything in particular you wanted to highlight there?
Well, we're going to be looking at USC's projected 2024 NFL draft class. Like, if you're going to talk about NFL draft, like, now is still a good time to do that. And so, USC really next year, Trojans are poised to have a big time NFL draft class. And more particularly, like, you're going to see the Trojans really stuff that top 100. You're going to get a lot of bodies in the top 100, which really is the true measure of a top program, on par with Ohio State and Alabama and Georgia, LSU, other programs that have really stuffed the draft with a lot of high quality prospects. USC is about to re-enter that conversation next year. So we're going to be going through the 2024 draft class and having some fun with that this week.
There it is, folks. Join us here each and every Monday at 11 Eastern and 8 Pacific on Trojans Live right here at the Voice of College Football. Again, do your best to get the word out there on social media and in any other venue available to you here at the Voice of College Football. Let folks know that we're talking USC football each and every Monday, and we will see you in 7 days. Matt, thank you so much as always.
Thank you.